Hi everyone, Sarah here from Growing Home and Garden. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to start a garden from the beginning, the bare basics, and I'm laying out 4 key elements of starting a garden that it's really important to keep in mind from the beginning to set yourself up for success. These are things that beginners should have in mind when starting a brand new garden, and things that people who are more advanced in gardening, people who garden season after season, are still trying to fine-tune and get right. Little by little, every degree that you can, it really makes a difference in the joy that you have in your garden, the production that you can get out of your garden. So in this video, I'm going to be laying out those 4 key things that I think will really help you get started on the right foot. So what are those 4 things? I'm breaking this video up into chapters so that you can go back and reference each section individually if you would like. And I'm also going to link a blog post that I did that really went into detail on each of these 4 categories, these 4 elements that I think are so critical for success. But let's just start off with sunlight. In my case, I like to grow things like fruits, vegetables, and flowers, and those things more often than not want full sun. Now, what does full sunlight mean? That means for a lot of plants, they want 6 or more hours of direct sunlight shining on them. That means that they are basking in the sun without shade for those 6 or more hours. Now, as you get more advanced, you might find that there are some varieties that like far more than that. For example, there are varieties of onions that require more than 12 hours of sunlight, direct sunlight per day for production. But I would not consider those kind of the starting point for new beginner gardeners. I would say things with more traditional requirements are a good starting point for beginners. Things like zucchinis, tomatoes, carrots, lettuce. When you start your garden, have this general direct sun requirement in the back of your mind and be thinking about, where can I put these plants that they will get at least 6 hours of direct sunlight per day. Now, depending on where you live, your plants in the middle of the growing season might be getting 10, 12 hours of direct sunlight. And depending on the plant, this might be fantastic as long as you're watering enough. And I'll talk more about watering later in the video, but shoot for that minimum of 6 hours of direct sunlight if you want to see your plants growing and producing to their full potential. Now, ingredient number 2 to success is having fertile soil. The type of soil that you use in your garden is largely dependent on the growing situation that you're in. If you're growing in containers or pots, so really something that is a smaller environment, more compact environment for your plants, you will probably want to use something like a potting soil or a container garden mix for growing the plants in your garden. Whereas if you're in raised beds, you may go for something that is more of a garden mix, or maybe even labeled as a raised bed garden mix. I think a great way to figure out exactly what soil you need for your growing situation is to go to your local garden center, to ask the people who are working there in the soil department what they would recommend for your growing situation. Because not all soil mixes are the same. Based on where that soil will be used and what the soil is used for, soil mixes are blended differently and will behave differently in different environments. So depending on how you're gardening, whether in pots, in raised garden beds, or straight in the ground, you will have different soil needs. And that brings up another option, which is starting your garden by planting directly in your native soil, right in the ground in your backyard, for example. The quality of your soil varies drastically from one neighborhood to the next, one city to the next. You could have more sand in your soil, more clay in your soil. So it's important to understand the quality of your soil before you go planting crops directly in it. One of the great things you can do to save yourself the headache of planting in your soil and not knowing whether your plant will do well at all is to get a soil test done to understand what the makeup of your soil is. Is it fantastic and good to go? You don't need to add any soil amendments to it. Or is it soil that could use some help in the way of adding some nutrients to it? So a soil test can be really helpful and save you a lot of headache. As a beginner, my recommendation would be for your first season to get a couple small pots or containers to grow your first crop of vegetables and fruits and flowers in. Pots like terracotta pots, plastic pots with good drainage are a fantastic place to start and to experiment and to figure out how much you love gardening and whether to expand to a larger growing area, start to make some raised beds, or grow straight in your soil as well. So now we're moving on to ingredient number 3 for a successful garden. We already talked about ingredient number 1, at least 6 hours of direct sunlight. Ingredient number 2, you have a great fertile soil that is specifically made for your growing situation. And then number 3 is the fun part, which is growing your plants. So you have sunlight, you have soil, and now it's time to get into plants. My recommendation for beginners is to start with seedlings. You can find seedlings at local nurseries, Home Depot, a garden center. This is a great place for beginners to start because someone else has already taken on the challenge of planting a seed and having it grow into a baby plant. So you've already eliminated one of the harder stages of growing, which is getting a plant from a seed to an actual seedling. If you're a little bit more advanced as a gardener, starting flowers, fruits, and vegetables from seed is a very economical way to get a lot of production out of just one packet of seeds. It's usually just a few dollars. But as a beginner, taking the guesswork and the challenge out of growing from the beginning is what I would recommend. Some really rewarding, productive seedlings to grow that thrive in full sun are things like cucumbers, zucchinis, tomatoes, and peppers. All of these things beginners absolutely can grow, and with nutritious soil and direct sunlight and the proper amount of watering, you have a really great chance of getting produce off of those plants in your very first year of growing. Ingredient number 4 is going to be, once you have your seedlings in the ground, watering them and watering them consistently. You can water them by hand with a watering can, you can water them with the hose. There's also the option potentially as a more advanced gardener to even install drip irrigation that almost does all the watering work for you. But as a beginner, starting with a watering can or hose is a fantastic place to start. My preference is, because I have a little bit larger of a garden, is to water with a hose. And I like to water with the hose because I can spend a little bit of time at each and every one of my plants giving it water. I can also take that time to check in with all the plants and make sure they're looking healthy, pull any weeds that might be around. You'll probably find as the temperatures fluctuate throughout the growing season that your soil and your plants may require watering more on one day than the next. You'll have to learn little by little just how much water your plants need, but as a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't water plants to the point where all day long they are sitting in mud. That is on the extreme of overwatering, and you shouldn't be on the other extreme of touching the soil and it's really dry and crumbly and cracking. It should be somewhere in the middle where if you stick your finger into the soil, it's a bit moist. But you'll learn over time a happy medium where most of your plants are thriving. So those are my 4 key ingredients for garden success for beginners. When you put together sunlight, fertile soil, seedlings, and consistent watering, it's very likely that you'll have success, even if it's your very first time starting a garden. So I really encourage you to give it a try. Keep in the back of your mind that it's your garden, garden the way you want to. The things that I laid out in this video are really the basics and the groundwork, but from there, you can iterate on building out your garden and your gardening strategy according to your experiences along the way, what's important to you, and how you want to grow. So I hope this video helps you out and gives you the start that you need to pursue growing your garden the way that you want to, and gives you those foundational elements so that you can have the confidence to go and grow. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I post videos every week on growing your home and garden your way. I'll also leave my social media in the description below, and that blog post that goes into even more detail on this topic, I'll link that below as well. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.